All right, I'm here at Fidelity National Title today, and we're going to talk to my buddy Josiah about what is title insurance, why do you need title insurance, what's escrow, should you escrow, is it fun to escrow? We're going to get all these questions asked. Let's check it out. So here we are at Fidelity National Title. I'm here with my buddy Josiah McDaniel, and he is an expert in the exciting world of title. Would you call yourself an expert?
Sure.
And it is exciting. So whenever we're doing transactions, a lot of the times we get a seller net sheet or we get a good faith estimate, and at this point the consumer kind of looks at this title policy or title fee and they're like, what am I getting charged for? So what is title insurance? What does a title company do?
So in the simplest forms, title insurance, basically our company is going to research a property. So the seller is putting a property up for sale and they've executed a contract. So we're going to then research the property records going back as far as we can possibly find and make sure that legally that seller has a right to sell that property, that there's not someone else holding rights to the property somewhere that could come back later and say, hey, I had rights to that property as well. So we're going to search the rights to the property, and we do all the record searching and all that. So that way the buyer has peace of mind that when they purchase that property, it's theirs.
So you're tracking who's sold the property all the way back to as far as you can, making sure that the property is actually transferable.
Yeah, not just who's sold the property and bought the property, but who's done work on the property. Is there a mechanic lien, from somebody who made improvements to the property that hasn't been paid, and they've slapped a lien on the property? We're going to find that as well.
I imagine that would be a mess if you were a new buyer, you moved into your property, and then all of a sudden find out that, oh, there's a lien on your property that you had nothing to do with.
Right, and if by insuring it, if something came up where it wasn't found, we are saying that we put our name on the line to make sure that that's taken care of, so the buyer doesn't have to worry about a huge bill that wasn't paid previously. That's on us now. So
awesome. That sounds like a valuable policy then.
It's the least expensive insurance you'll ever own in your life.
So
when it comes to the benefit,
let's say if I am a consumer and I'm looking at a seller net sheet or looking at my estimated cost for closing as a buyer, and I see this title policy fee in there and I don't want to pay it, can I just save that money and say, hey, you know what, I don't need a title policy?
If there's a lender involved, the lender is going to require it. Okay, so there's the lender policy and the owner's policy. The lender is going to require that, and so it gets a little bit technical and tricky when you're talking about trying to waive it. It is technically optional, but anytime the lender is involved, it's really not going to be optional.
Okay. Lender's going to require it, and pretty much any investor that I know is going to want that policy as well.
Yes. Anybody who is in the financial, is vested interest in the financials of the purchase of a property, they're going to require it.
So pretty much maybe the only people who would say they don't want it might be in a for sale by owner situation, a buyer maybe not using a realtor, thinking they might try to save the fee, but if they talk to anybody that was advising them, they'd probably tell them, hey, you want this policy.
Yeah, if they're paying cash and there's no lender telling them they have to, that would be the only scenario, I guess, where somebody might consider it. But even then, the risk that you're taking on, especially in a for sale by owner situation where there is no professional involved in the selling of this property, are really willing to purchase a property that nobody's ensuring that that seller had a right to sell it.
At that point, you're just taking everyone's word for it.
Yes.
It's kind of
there's been no record searching. There's nobody vouching for this property.
So the small amount of the fee versus the huge benefit, it's a no-brainer.
Well, in that scenario, say that seller doesn't have rights to sell it. It's owned by somebody else in the family. That person who owns the property can come back for that property, and you're out the purchase price of the property versus the, negligible cost that the insurance is. And that one policy will last them until they go to sell that property again. And so it's a one-time purchase. So it's really a major risk that a buyer would be taking on and not requiring title insurance.
Okay. So let's say I'm a buyer and I purchase the property and I've lived in there a few months, something happens, my job's going to transfer me or whatnot, where I decide, hey, I'm going to move in just a few months. Hey, we've got this new title policy. Do I need to get a new title policy when I sell that property?
Yes, and your buyer is going to require that. In the state of Texas, the seller is providing it to the buyer. That's why it's the cost to the seller 99% of the time. unless negotiated otherwise. But that buyer has no idea what you've done to that property since you purchased it. And if it's such a quick release of the property, put it back on the market. What is it, a flip? What have you done to the house? Who do you owe money to that's done improvements? So there's all those opportunities for liens, and we make sure that seller has done everything they're supposed to do and has rights to sell it, so that buyer has peace of mind again. I mean, it goes back to that same thing. What happened between?
Right.
Nobody knows. You're just taking their word for it again.
Sure. So I guess lastly, I'd say it sounds like we definitely need to have title insurance whenever we're purchasing a property. What's the difference between all the different title companies? Should I just shop around and find one that has the cheapest rate?
So Fidelity being one of the largest title insurance provider in the country, it's never going to go anywhere, right? So you go to sell your property, say the property stays within the family for 50 to 100 years. There's still going to be records within our company of that property, right? And so you're always going to be able to come back and find us. There are plenty of opportunities out there at smaller title companies where you may save a few dollars, and we're talking, in the tens and low hundreds of savings for something that long term could put you at risk for, companies go out of business all the time. So, and also on those fees, there can be some nickel and diming where we roll it all into the escrow fee, if you want to call it that, and so you're not paying for copies and you're not paying for these FedExes or any shipping costs that might be involved. It's all just right there in one small fee, and it's negligible compared to the risk that you're taking on by not just going to those name brands. So.
Gotcha. Is there anything that you can think of that a buyer or seller should know that we're not mentioning right now about this exciting world of title?
Yeah, title insurance. The exciting part is we get to see people close on their dream home if they're buying, or sellers really have a calm, peaceful closing after a long process of trying to get their home sold. So it is actually exciting every now and then. And so I think really just that knowing that when you use a title company that is reputable, you do have a peace of mind that there's not going to be any surprises later on.
Yep.
There's not going to be, you're going to be treated in a professional manner. It's going to be treated by professionals. We're just ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So there's a professionalism that comes with working with a place like Fidelity.
From my point of view, I can definitely see that there actually is some excitement there. I know that every transaction is different, and part of having a great title company in place is a lot of the fires get put out before the consumer ever knows about it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times they're looking at it as, hey, there's this fee that I paid for and I didn't get much for it. Well, there's great benefit that we just learned about, but there's also plenty of stress that is avoided from having a great title company in place.
Yeah, I think you'll know that you've had a good experience with an escrow and title company when you get to the closing table and it's been fairly stress-free. You've been communicated with well, and you can come and you sign your documents, and it's a joyous day rather than a long, drawn-out, stressful process. So, yeah, there's a lot that we do behind the scenes, that our escrow staff does behind the scenes, that it doesn't ever get to the customer to add that stress to them. It's just handled for them, and it's a peaceful, calm transaction. That's the goal anyway.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And so we just pulled back the curtain on what is title insurance and why do you need it. Let me know what other questions you might have, what other videos I can make, and we'll see you next time. So I'm here at National Fidelity Title with my Fidelity National. I knew it was going to screw that up. Take two, here we go.